Zahvaljujem zamjeniku gradonačelnika. Sada ćemo početi s predavanjem, pa bi najavila Xaviera Matillu, arhitekta, urbanista, konzultanta, profesora na Katalonskom sveučilištu i glavnog gradskog arhitekta Barcelone u periodu od 2019. do 2023. godine. Izvolite.
It's okay.
Yeah, can you hear me without microphone? Okay, yeah. Okay, that's right. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I feel truly glad and honored to be here today, and I really appreciate to have been invited not to talk about Barcelona superblocks. Don't get wrong, I love Barcelona superblocks, but I also appreciate to have the opportunity to talk about other important topics that we worked on during our period at the City Council of Barcelona. As you probably already know, I was chief architect between 2018 and 2023, so today I will talk mainly about some of urban transformations that we managed during these 4 years. Some of them are still ongoing. Okay, let me briefly introduce you to the city of Barcelona. Barcelona is actually a small town with only 100 square kilometers and 1.8 million people living there. So you can imagine it's a high-dense city, a very compact urban fabric between the sea, the mountain, and the 2 rivers on the east limit and the western limit. So you can imagine how important are brownfields in the city of Barcelona. Basically, from many decades ago, the only way to develop the city were to transform the built environment, to identify which areas could be a new transformation through underused areas, but also transforming other kind of areas. I recovered this picture from the Olympic project at late 80s, because the Olympic project in Barcelona was grounded on brownfield transformations. Basically, the idea, you can see, was identify 12 new transformation area across the city, 4 of them, the red ones, for the Olympic facilities. This is the area of, okay, this is the area where the Olympic Stadium is, the different villages and other sports facilities. But there were also identified other 8 new areas, brownfields, with an overall idea that was to rebalance the city, distributing central activities across the city. At that moment, the main central activities were concentrated on this area. I mean, administrative buildings, commercial activities, hotels also. So the idea that gathered all the different transformations was to spread and to balance all these central functions across the city. So I thought it was important, how was essential at that moment to identify a common strategy for all these transformations area, regardless that each one has specific answers to its own situation. And this was a principle that we put on the table when we started our period. Beyond this idea of considering the city as a whole system, was the idea of how to reconcile the global scale, basically, with the human scale and metropolitan scale. The Olympic project in Barcelona meant that the city, from that moment, was on the global stage as a global city, attracting investors, attracting tourism, but it also had a side effect. We are suffering right now of over-tourism, and we are also suffering the pressure of global investors approaching to the city as an asset, but not a livable site. So our idea was not to reject the global scale, of course, it's important, but to focus even more in the human scale. And when I say human scale, I'm not only referring to public space, but also public facilities, main public facilities, and also housing affordability. That, as you probably know, is one of the main concerns right now, not only in Barcelona, in Catalonia, and also in Spain. So beyond all the projects that you will see today is this idea on how to reconcile some global interests and private interests, but how to also introduce, how are we able to transform these brownfields into a new place where neighbors can live and can get what they need at that moment. I will talk about these three brownfields or underused areas. The first one is the historical fair venue of the city of Barcelona in this side of the mountain of Montjuic. It was built in 2019 for the international exhibition that was hosted at that moment. It's a medium-sized area, and it's a public ownership, and you will see later the initiative was also public. The second one is a different situation. It's a private ownership. It's a former Mercedes-Benz factory in the city of Barcelona, so it was a private initiative, but with public control and approval also by the city council. And the third one is the largest one. Right now is the largest residential development ongoing in the city of Barcelona, around 75 hectares, and different conditions from the other two, private ownership, but public initiative. We will talk about this later. But let me talk just briefly also about the legal framework through it's possible that kind of transformations in Barcelona. Basically, the national land use law established two different conditions for the land, rural land and urban land. But within the urban land condition, we can consider some of this urban land as unconsolidated land. So it means that this area will be transformed, and it also means that there are new different conditions of this area. So there are rights and burdens to be considered when developing that. Which are the main obligations of these areas? And I thought it was important to take into account. The first one, and it's coming from the national law, the property must transfer the equivalent to the 10% of the land use value to the administration, in this case to the city council. It doesn't mean the 10% of the surface, but the 10% of the value. So the city council receives a piece of land equivalent to this 10% of land use value. The second one, of course, is to transfer public systems, streets, green areas, facilities, and so on. But for the green areas, there is a specific condition. If there is an increase of the residential build floor, the green areas must increase also to balance the needs of the standard of green areas per inhabitant in this situation. And there is also a condition for social housing. This new development, there is a minimum of 30% of the built residential floor that has to be for social housing. Social housing for us is a price cap housing, even if it's for rental or for selling. And of course, the obligation to afford the urbanization for all public spaces. There is a main condition beyond all of that, that you have to guarantee that there is a balance between rights and burdens. It means that the private investment has to assure around the 15% of benefits of all the operation. And this is a diagram showing how through the different urban planning, the tools can be developed for brownfield transformation. Of course, you need a town plan amendment and general plan amendment to consider all these areas as unconsolidated one. And from that point, this kind of amendments usually does not define which is the final urban shape. So there is a second step of urban planning needed. This is a development plan or a detailed plan, I think it's also called here. That is the one who finally defined which will be the final urban shape, the different build conditions and build codes that will be implemented in this new area. From that point, once the development plan is approved, start the land we call a reparcellation project. It's a project that transforms the former ownership structure into the new one according to the new urban shape. From that point starts the urbanization and the building of the different architecture. Within these development plans, it's obligated to provide all that kind of documents and assessments, mobility assessment, economical balance assessment, social report, identifying which are the social housing needs of these areas, of course, environmental report and heritage study if it's needed, because there are some protected buildings within this area. And of course, a participatory process is also required on every transformation. So let's go to the first area, the historic third venue of the city of Barcelona. You can see an aerial view, the mountain in Montjuic. On the background, recovering the location into the map of the city of Barcelona. It started in 1929, and this is a picture from the original project. As you can see, basically it was conceived as an isolated project, with no any connection with the surrounding urban areas on both sides. It was a kind of monumental project with different pavilions and the National Palace of Catalonia at that point and so on. This is right now one of the main problems of this area. It has not any connection with the surrounding neighborhoods. It started when the first company is a kind of private and public company. It started when this fair office asked to the city council to start transformation aiming to upgrade different pavilions already existing there. But the idea was to build on this area a new residential development, free market residential development, to obtain enough benefits to afford the upgrading operations of the different pavilions. When we received this proposal, our idea tried to change the main idea of the transformation. Okay, there are the different pavilions that are under protection, heritage protection on this area, okay. But our idea was, okay, we need to upgrade the pavilions. We agree. This is the global condition we could see, as we said before. But we need to reintegrate the fair into the urban fabric. This is not a physical enclosure, but actually it works like if it was, because when there is a fair event, they even put some fences, and it's a kind of huge barrier dividing both neighborhoods between them, make it more difficult to reach the mountain from this side. So our idea was we need to shift from a large venue into a new urban fair. So it meant to split the different pavilions into smaller pavilions in order to make it more permeable for the city. So we get the first proposal from the city council teams. We work a new proposal. It was the main idea. So, okay, the fair office needed a huge pavilion, or I don't remember, 40,000 square meters built. And we say, okay, we could provide this amount of surface, not in just one building, but in different buildings all working together, while providing these new urban connections with a new street, cutting the current venue by the middle, connecting with the different neighborhoods, even connecting beyond these neighborhoods, providing this new permeability of this area to the rest of the city. And the second principle was to introduce diversity, mixed use in this area. You can see here are all the pavilions, the same color. This is the proposal that finally was approved. You can see there appear red new areas. That means local public facilities, the human scale into the fair, and a new group of residential blocks, all of them for social housing. So it was the idea, okay, we need to introduce residential area to reconnect the fair venue with the city, but we need public facilities for the neighbors because we still have many needs in terms of public facilities in different neighborhoods, and we also want to provide social housing. As I said before, this is one of the main shortages that we have already in the city of Barcelona. And here you have some pictures of the final proposal showing this medium scale connecting all this transformation with this new street, connecting not only with the Pobla Sec neighborhoods and Font de la Gualla neighborhood and the mountain, but also connecting with the Champla and the green axis coming from the superblock strategy. So there are these smaller pavilions creating this new smaller scale on this area. We also provided some pictures showing how was the urban environment that we imagined for this new residential area, not too much high-rise buildings, medium-sized buildings, medium width for the streets, so we imagine a kind of new livability for all this area. The legal document, the amendment of the Plan General, basically shifted from this former zoning map into this new one, identifying 3 new development plans. One for this small new pavilion, the central one for the new 3 pavilions, and this third one for the new residential area that will be developed in the next years. And these are some different figures coming from the amendment, identifying which are the different legal conditions for these different developments. You can see then the maximum units for dwellings, the maximum build floor for different uses. There is a condition that at least 2,000 square meters will be for commercial activities on the ground floor, and so on. These are the 3 different developments. And we also propose to the fair office not to appoint directly some teams to design the different projects, but to organize an open call competition, an international competition, to provide not only the design of the buildings, but also the urban planning development documents. So they launched the competition 1 year ago, I think so, for these 3 different pieces, and 1 month ago were announced the 3 teams that will develop not only the buildings, but also the development plan of these 3 areas. The first one is the main new pavilion that will be designed by the team from the Chilean architect Milan Radic. The second one is, will be designed by different local teams in Barcelona, and the third one by the team led by Bjarke Ingels in this area. And if we go back to this diagram to see how was the development of this area, it took 2 years to reach an agreement between the fair office and the city council with the new proposal. And from that moment, they organized this international competition that will enable all the different development plans and urbanization and building projects that will be prepared during the next years. Of course, there was also a participatory process, not too complex. This case was quite simple, just with many different sessions in trying to explain and to be transparent with the project, with the different stakeholders and neighbors of the area, 4 different specific workshops on different topics, economical activity, facilities, mobility, and housing, and finally feedback from the city council to close all this participatory process. There was not too much conflict on that, some differences between, but it was not a very, very difficult process from the city council. Okay, let's go to the second example, the former Mercedes-Benz factory. We are going to the northern side of the city of Barcelona. It's a smaller place with around 10 hectares. Mercedes-Benz transformation started when, in this case, the owner and developer is the same agent, asked to the city council to promote the transformation to make possible a new residential investment in this area. And again, we received the proposal and we started a collaborative process with them in order to identify a kind of master plan, strategic master plan to elaborate after that the amendment of the general plan. Again, our main concern was how to reconnect this enclosure. In this case, there were a wall surrounding the factory. Our main concern was how to reconnect this former industrial activity with the different neighborhoods in both directions, connecting main sites and places, major squares, major streets between them, and even take the possibility to create new significant public space within La Mercedes area. You can see different pictures showing all this strategy on different scales, on metropolitan connection scales, but also providing this, we could say, this new urban fabric with different blocks, also creating a new small scale residential area surrounding the former industrial building of La Mercedes. And you can also see, this is a very important strategic site in the city because you can see there is a railway infrastructure that it's coming from the northern side. This is also under construction right now. I think it's out of the map, but around here there will be the new high-speed train station in the city of Barcelona, so it will be a really strategic position for all that kind of new developments. And you can see they are identified the different public spaces, the different residential neighborhoods in this surrounding area has a certain shortage of public space and green areas, so it was opportunity to provide new green areas, all of these residential neighborhoods. And in this case, the general plan amendment directly defined which will be the final shape of all these developments. So there won't be a new development plan. It was directly the amendment who incorporate all those decisions that are defining how exactly will be these different blocks, residential blocks and economical activity blocks, incorporating all these legal documents that are needed to define building conditions, and so on. This was the former zoning map, and this is the new zoning map approved in 2024. And in this case, the amendment is different from the one of the FAIR, define exactly how these different buildings will be built and which are the different conditions regarding the height, the distances, and even the uses that can incorporate each of them. Okay, some different pictures about this technical. And about the figures, it's important. You can imagine the main discussion between the private developer and the city council was the amount of the build floor of the area, I mean the business. Finally, we reached an agreement around 200,000 square meters. This is a huge amount of build floor. The city of Barcelona, but we also reached an agreement that defined that not all this build floor will be for a residential area, that it was the intention of the private developer, but the 42% of the build floor will be for economical activities. So we were interested to create a mixed use, a new area incorporating not only economical activities, but probably a new university school that will be there. And also important, within this 84% of residential build floor, the 40% will be for social housing. Of course, it was not the first idea of the private developer, but trying to balance the amount of floor and different social conditions. So again, you can see how to manage these global investing objectives with this human scale defended by the city council. And these are some technical. I thought it was important to show how detailed is defined all the different residential and building general projects in this case. So the teams try to work not only from the urban scale, but at the architecture scale when they are developing that kind of development plans. And there is an important idea I don't want to miss, that is the idea how to create new urban fronts or continuous facades. So the idea is to create the streets again, like the fair in Barcelona. So on the cross sections, it can be easily identified. So this is a street with continuous facades on both sides. This is also a street, of course, with different hierarchies and roles, but the idea is always to provide continuity, urban continuity, not only through the facades, but also through the ground floor activities on all these. You can see there is different colors between the ground floor that is expected to be economical activity or facilities, that the darker color that indicates housing on the different floors. This document even included some specific conditions for the public space urbanization. So there were identified different kind of public space, gardens, squares, another square, a new garden. Even incorporate some urbanization criteria that will be followed when the project will be designed, and some pictures showing how was the environment thought at that moment. In this case, it was strong the idea of a new environmental condition, climate adaptation, of course, new mechanisms to manage water cycle management, and so on. And if we go back to this diagram, in this case, this agreement between public-private agents took 4 years, and it means that town plan amendment was approved, but in this case, there is no needed this development plan, so the private developer is ongoing, is working right now on the land distribution project, I guess, and we'll start soon the urbanization project and the buildings. And let's go to the third one. I don't know how much time we have enough time, okay. The third site is La Marina del Prat Vermell. This is a very singular project. It started at the beginning of the century, around 26, I think so. And in this case, it's interesting because the initiative came from the city council. So it was the former chief architect of the city who decided that a new residential area will be a good idea in this position. You can see this is the limit of the city of Barcelona, and this area is beyond the mountain of Montjuic, so you never said that it will be a good position for a new residential area. There was a huge controversy about that, but it was a decision. So it started with the works, even the different industrial activities, and because all of this area was private owned, and the different industrial activities that were already there. So it was not an underused land. There were industrial activities ongoing. Finally, the different owners understood that there could be business opportunity with residential uses, so they reached a kind of agreement. But in this case, what is interesting is that the plan amendment introduced a progressive development strategy. So the idea was not to transform at one time all this huge area, but to provide some rules to give time to the different industrial activities to decide when they should think it would be the best moment to start the transformation. So you will see later there are some of the blocks that have been transformed already, but other ones still have economical and industrial activity waiting to a best moment for them in terms of get economical impact for all these activities. So this is the original zoning map. It was 22, the code. The zone in Barcelona is 22A. This is the industrial zone, and it was transformed into this one. As you can see, basically, the shape split it. These large blocks proper for industrial activities, but not for residential. So basically, the plan introduced new streets, splitting all this large area into smaller ones, providing better distances for new residential urban fabric, and also introducing a new green infrastructure with different elements. The green facade, this axis connecting the mountain of Montjuic to the neighborhood at this main park, central park, in the center of this area, providing a new public space for the new residential development. It was important also because you can imagine it was an industrial area. There were not enough public transport connecting this area with the central city. So it's in our mindset, this is far away from the center of the city. And at that moment, there were not metro line reaching this area. So the first thing the city faced is the enlargement of different metro lines, underground metro lines, reaching not only this area, but also all these industrial areas. So it needed a huge investment effort, not only from the city council, but from the regional government, to provide better connections from this new residential development with the center area of the city. These are the figures. It's expected to reach almost 30,000 inhabitants of this area. Not all the built floor will be, again, for residential uses. There will be this 25% that will be for commercial activities, offices, and other kind of non-residential areas. And again, this human scale was translated into a new condition. The half of the new residential built floor will be for social housing, managed directly by the city council. Some main ideas of this residential development grounded on the main objective of creating proximity between the different activities, mixed use, condition in the neighborhood, introducing also the idea of adaptation to climate change, environmental and health conditions. Of course, the idea of cohesive neighborhood, thanks to incorporating this mixed type of housing with social and free market housing within the neighborhood. And three different axes. My apologies because it's in Catalan, but they will translate housing first, jobs, I would say, connectivity, public space, and green infrastructure, metabolism, and facilities beyond all the different development. You can see on this aerial view, the idea, again, how to reconnect. It was even more difficult than the others that I showed before because you have this topographical barrier like mountain, some infrastructures heading to the port of the city, industrial areas, so there were not too much opportunities to reconnect, but we tried to find some of them like this avenue or these green corridors connecting with the mountain. The general plan amendment identified 14 development plans Each one for different blocks. And it was interesting, it was incorporated infrastructure plan. It means that when the owners of one of these blocks want to develop the transformation, they don't have to afford urbanization. Basically, the developer pays to the city council the amount of money that is needed to afford urbanization, but it's the city council who manages all the public space projects. So it allows to the city to control how this public space is created, is urbanized, which are the criteria, and to provide an overall criteria for all the different public spaces, avoiding that each development is creating different conditions regarding the different small areas that are they developing. The amendment also incorporates building conditions. Again, the idea of creating new urban fronts, allowing higher buildings on the different main facades and reducing the height into these central areas, identify which are the ground floors that are allowed for housing, but there are other ground floors that housing is forbidden. So it's a way to indicate that there should be commercial or public activities on the ground floor. And this is a picture showing how is the current situation of the development in different colors. You can see the different blocks that have been already developed or almost built, most of them. So there is a specific office of the city council managing all that kind of process and monitoring how the transformation is ongoing in this case, and in permanent contact with the different developers to manage and to fix everything. This is the urban shape that is being created after these different transformations. You can see a kind of, I would say, broad diversity of different buildings and shapes, but keeping all these build conditions coming from the general amendment, maintain these continuous facades on this main axis of the new neighborhood. Of course, social housing. There is also a strategy where to locate the social housing that I said before is the 50% of the new build floor. So they are identifying where the new social housing is provided and managing the new buildings. For instance, there are not only public housing, but cooperative projects. So in this case, in this corner, there is a cooperative project. It means this is a public ownership that is provide to us a cooperative project to manage a new building for 90 years, I guess. Facilities management, of course, there is a strategy monitoring where the new land for new facilities is provided. I must admit that we have a problem in Catalonia, in Spain, because all that kind of new residential, I was talking about that with someone yesterday. The first buildings to be built are the residential ones, not the public facilities. So it's a kind of problem. It would be absolutely better to build first the social infrastructure before the housing, because many neighbors that are living already there does not have still this healthcare center that will be built, and you know the difficulty between the local administration, the regional one, who should build that kind of new facilities. Anyway, there is a management about the different land that will be in the future different facilities. And this is how a private owner or a private developer is developing right now these different blocks. This is one of these northern areas. So this is the document coming from the amendment. So there are the different conditions, build conditions, zoning conditions, the different figures. And this is the picture of different development plans. Documents. So the development plan defines not only the zoning, the new zoning structure, but also the building conditions, and with different documents checking different conditions like buildings, proportions, and so on. And it's interesting because usually the private developer is working at the same time with the urban planning and the building projects. So they can work at the same time and coordinating perfectly how the new buildings will be and how it's regulated through the new zoning conditions. And these are the different stages or phases that are planned right now in different colors. You can see the different urbanization phases managed by the city council, thanks to the money that they are receiving from the different developers. But it also allows to urbanize a minimum amount of surface that makes sense, that it becomes a kind of new useful new public space like this central park. And this is how is this new urban new public spaces connecting with green infrastructure, mainly connecting with the mountain of Montjuic. The different kind of public spaces, basically there are two kind of conditions for the streets in this light green and parks for the darker green. And this is not a document from the amendment, but from the neighborhood office that is providing which are the urban design conditions, incorporating heating and cooling infrastructure in this case, greenery conditions, water management solutions, also mobility, also conditions including bike lanes like this one, and so on. And some pictures showing how is the neighborhood office imagined that will be this different public spaces and streets. It happens that we already have the streets, but there is not still the buildings that will come later in a years. This is a picture of the Central Park. This is a render, but it's already finished. So more or less it is the same. And here are the different facilities that are already built. There are the different facilities identified, and these spots are identifying the future facilities that will come in the future. Finally, some aerial pictures to show you this under transformation landscape with some empty plots, new buildings, industrial activities. You can see here, this is it was the National Palace that we saw from the other side when we talk about the venue of the fair, the mountain of Montjuic, and this idea of connecting. This is where is right now the new Central Park. This picture has 1 year probably. And this mix of new buildings, I think in this case, interesting, this idea of progressive transformation. It's impossible to build housing for 30,000 people just at once. So it was interesting giving time to the different activities to adapt to their possibilities and to provide it in different phases. Some other aerial pictures. You can see better how the new residential buildings are in this area, in this case. Okay, and finally, we go again to this diagram. The town plan amendment was approved in 26, okay? And from that moment, different development plans, block by block, were approved and executed, as you say before. So in this case, it's a multi-development strategy allowing a different rhythm of providing new transformations. And that's all from my side.
Predvidjeli smo sada prije pauze za kavu, ako imate još koje pitanje za našeg gosta, predavača. Evo, slobodno se javite, pa će kolega.
Thank you for a very insightful lecture. These three case studies are, well, quite illustrative to us, and I took quite a few notes. I'm not going to bother you too much. Let me just refer to this Mercedes area. You mentioned that, yeah, Mercedes. 58% of the built area of the square meters, right, belongs to the residential use, yeah, right? And out of these 58%, 40% goes for social housing. So what does it really mean? What do you mean by social housing, and how is it regulated? I mean, who owns the apartments, and how this social status is regulated? If you can tell me more about that.
Sure. Social housing basically means that there is a limited price, whether it is for rental or for selling. So the limitation comes from a regional law that establishes which are the different limited index for social housing. And when the reparcellation, the ownership transformation is elaborated, this is the document who defines which will the land that the social housing will be built. So in this case, it can be owned by private or public. It doesn't matter. The condition is that there is a price limited for both of them. What usually happens that you remember that the developer must transfer to the city council the 10% of the value. So usually what happens is the city council receive most of these 40% of social housing that can be equivalent of this 10% of the value, because the price of social housing is lower than the free market housing. So if not, is total for the city council, most of these 40% will go to the city council, thanks to this 10% of value that they will receive, okay? The City Council of Barcelona own a public company that is the one who manage social housing public policies, building new residential social housing buildings, managing some other tools like preemption and right to buy, right, that we have in Barcelona. So the City Council has its own tool to manage all these possibilities to build new social housing. Okay.
I also have a question about social, Renata Suša, Zagreb Fair.
Okay.
I also have a question about this social housing. So maybe I did not understand it correctly, but are there really built, are the developers really building these houses, or they are transferring the cost, the fee to the city council only?
There are private developers building social housing
Uh-huh.
and managing.
Uh-huh.
The problem for a developer is to manage the rental housing stock. So they want to build sometimes, and they want to transfer it to the city council to manage it. But there are some developers, not too much, that are building and managing the social housing for rent. The private developer prefers to build social housing for selling, because it's not a problem for them. It's only a kind of value. They have to manage a lower value, but they want to sell and to avoid any problem managing. But there are still some ones that are managing that. I would say that most of the social housing is managed, rental social housing is managed by the city council or the regional government at that moment. So we don't have a non-profit. We have one non-profit company managing social housing, helping to the city council to manage that, but this is not quite common to have that kind of non-profit companies.
Okay, and I have one additional question. You said that the developer needs to pay for urbanization before starting with it. Is this a real cost of urbanization or some kind of a communal contribution depending on the amount of allowed gross developed area?
No, this is real. Actually,
so the total cost of...
Yes, they must execute the works for the urbanization, and the city council is receiving streets and public space and is checking is everything right as it was planned by the project. So the city council can reject a public space if it's considered that it's not as good as it was planned. So it's a real
so they have
obligation.
To do the work, yeah. They have to do the work according to the city plans.
Yeah.
So okay, thank you so much.
And this is a very strong protocol controlling urban design in Barcelona. Probably too much hard.
Good morning. My name is Valentina Gulina. I'm an urban anthropologist. And thank you for showing all these examples. And from what I could hear, everything went smoothly and is going smoothly. But I'm interested in what are the issues that were contested from whatever side, political, civil initiatives, I don't know, different political options and so on. So just briefly.
There were different situations for these three different sites. You saw it was quite different conditions for each of them. I would say the Mercedes project was probably that had more controversy with neighborhoods because of the density of the new residential area. Remember, 200,000 square meters. So the participatory process in this case was really interesting for us as a city council because we had a private investor asking for higher build floor conditions and neighborhoods complaining against that and asking for a lower level of density. So it helped us to try to find a balance between the private interests and the neighborhood's demands in order to reduce the amount of build floor that the private developer was asking at the moment. At the third venue, for instance, there were important discussion about the public facilities. The fair is within some different neighborhoods with important shortage of public facilities, like sport facilities. A library is also needed there. So the discussion with them was how to provide new land for these new neighborhood facilities. So in Barcelona, there is a strong social structure through the different neighborhood associations. So actually, there is a central office of the different neighborhood associations with some technical profiles helping them. So it was interesting how his role helped to attend which are the local needs when we are transforming all this area. So, and about this, a la Marina del Prat Vermell, actually there were not neighborhoods living there because there were only industrial activities. So at the beginning, the discussion was how to make possible the transformation in terms of economical balance. But right now is arising a new situation because there are already living there around 2,000 people. So this is a new neighborhood association that appeared there and is also monitoring and complaining and asking for new needs. So it's an ongoing process, very, very interesting. But in our case, I would say it's absolutely essential to have both sides, the private interests and the social demands, in order to be able to find which is the fair point on that kind of transformation.
Thank you. I'm Mauro Sirotnjak from Zagreb City Council. I have two questions, one regarding the management and property. So basically you explained that percentage of housing, for instance social housing, is mostly transferred to the City Council. So the price is fixed and the percentage is decided during the detailed planning, but the detailed planning also can be done within the amendment and the detailed development plan. So percentages are defined in one of these processes. And then the developer who builds gives an opportunity to the city to buy the flats, if I got it correctly. And about the public facilities, so you mentioned that developer has to respect the protocol and standards, and it is then transferred to the city with no cost, if I got it correctly.
Exactly.
Okay. And the second thing is about the process. So there is amendment to the land plan, which can, I think, to us can be transferred as general urban plan, so the whole city plan, right?
Yep.
And on the example of Mercedes factory, it's 4 years changes, drafting of the development plan. My question is, who does the changes? So is the public office or private urban planners? Can developers also engage private urban planners? So who controls the planning process? And basically you have the tools to outline the buildings in specific neighborhood, in specific plan, both on town planning, town amendment plan, but also in detailed development plan. So your end result is always an outline of the building, let's say, in a very detailed scale. So maybe if you can explain this process.
Yeah. let's go for the first question about the percentage of social housing. Is the regional law that established which is the minimum percentage of social housing for that kind of developments. The minimum is 30%. So this is a legal condition coming from the regional law. When you are writing a new general plan amendment, is the moment that you must fix which is this a minimum amount of social housing. 30% is the minimum. You can go up as you want. You saw in La Marina it was the 50%, and it's the general plan amendment who established which is the percentage, not the development plan. Okay, it's established by the general plan amendment. Okay, and the second question was about the management of talk about Mercedes.
4-year process of changes.
Yeah. Okay.
And who drafts the both town plan amendments and the detailed plans?
Yeah.
So who controls the process in terms of planning?
Yeah, the city council teams. A general plan amendment can only be promoted by the city council. And initially approved by the city council and finally approved by the regional government. But only the city council have the power to promote an amendment. What we did in this case is to work all together with the private investor, and the physical elaboration of the document was provided by the private investor, but controlled by the city council teams, urban planning teams. Actually, we even drew some outlines at the beginning to provide them which were our ideas. So it's important to have strong technical teams within the city council to be able to provide alternative to the private sector. If they are the only ones that have the technical possibility to draw, they are managing the process. So I would say who have the power to draw can manage how is the process. So for us, it was important to have enough people working on that kind of projects, drawing alternatives and providing this alternative in the negotiation process with the private. But is the public, is the local government who decides if approve or not that kind of projects. Yeah.
And maybe final question, when you decide that there is urban transformation area, let's say for Mercedes factory, can the developer or property owner over there build anything as it wants without the detailed plan?
No.
No, okay. This is interesting for Croatian ministry, especially to understand.
Yes. You see, right now, if there is not a plan amendment, they can only build industrial buildings with a low build floor level. So there is, the index is 1 square meter of build floor for each 1 square meter of land. So they are not interested. They want to change it. And you were saying, I don't remember, sorry, Mauro, you said?
Yes, Mauro.
You cannot build anything.
No, of course, no, just industrial buildings. And if you want to build something, you need to do the detailed plan within the general plan amendment, or if not, is in the general plan amendment, you need to elaborate a second step with the development plan.